I remember staring at my phone, reading the bank alert 3 times because I thought it was a mistake. $36,000. Unauthorized charges, all near my parents' neighborhood. I should have been scared. Instead, something cold and quiet settled in my chest, because I already had a feeling. I just needed the proof. And by my own birthday dinner, I was going to lay every single piece of it on their table. My name is Cassidy Vance. I'm 32 years old. And for most of my life, I believed that if you worked hard, stayed responsible, and kept your head down, your family would eventually see you clearly. They'd recognize what you contributed. They'd respect you the same way they respected everyone else. I held on to that belief for a long time, longer than I should have. I work as a financial analyst. Numbers, budgets, forecasts, accountability, that's my entire world. I am the person companies hire when something doesn't add up. I find patterns in data that other people miss. I catch the things that are deliberately hidden. That's not just my job. It's how my brain works all the time, whether I want it to or not. At home, I turned that part of myself off. I had to. Because using that analytical mind on my own family would have forced me to see the truth much, much sooner. And I wasn't ready for that truth. Not for a long time. I grew up as the older sibling, the steady one, the one who figured things out. When bills piled up, I handled them. When a family expense came up and money was short, my parents would mention it casually, like they were just thinking out loud, and somehow I'd end up covering it. I never demanded a thank you. I told myself that's just what family does. You carry the load without being asked. You show up because you love people. My brother Caleb was 3 years younger than me, and I say this without bitterness, he was always the favorite. My parents lit up differently around him. There was softness when they spoke to him, patience they didn't always have for me. When he failed a class, it was a rough semester. When I got anything less than perfect, it was a reflection of my effort. I learned early that the rules were different for him and for me. I learned that and I kept going anyway, because what else do? You adapt, you work harder, you tell yourself it doesn't matter. My dream was never flashy. I didn't want a mansion or a title or a spotlight. I wanted stability. A consulting firm of my own someday, small and efficient, built on the reputation I'd spent years earning. A life I controlled. That was everything to me. But emotionally, I was always walking on eggshells in my own family, choosing my words carefully, absorbing tension so other people didn't have to feel it, being the grown-up in rooms where I shouldn't have had to be the grown-up. I wasn't rich or glamorous. I didn't have the charm that made rooms fall in love with you the way Caleb did. But I had something they never expected, the kind of quiet, patient precision that waits, that watches, that remembers everything. I just hadn't turned it on them yet. If you've ever been the responsible one in your family, you already know the weight of that role. It doesn't come with a title. It doesn't come with praise or special treatment or gratitude. It comes with phone calls when something breaks. It comes with being the first name on the list when money is tight and the last name anyone thinks of when things are going well. You know what I'm talking about. The one who fixes things quietly. The one who doesn't ask for much, so people assume you don't need much. The one who gives and gives until the day you stop, and suddenly you're the selfish one, the cold one, the one who changed. Tell me, have you ever been blamed for something you didn't do, simply because it was easier for them? Because the alternative, admitting their own fault, was too uncomfortable? If that hits close to home, stay with me. Subscribe, because stories like this one don't get told enough. And if someone in your life has ever made you feel invisible despite everything you've done, click hype or give this a like. It helps other people who need this find it. I'm sharing this because I know I'm not the only one who's been used and then blamed for it. You give your time, your money, your patience, your peace, and somehow, in their version of the story, you're still the villain. You're still the problem. You're still overreacting. But here's what I've learned, slowly and painfully. Silence is not the same as safety. Keeping peace is not the same as having peace. And strength, real strength, doesn't always look loud. Stick with me because what happened next, I didn't see it coming. But when the moment arrived, I was ready. It started on a Tuesday morning, quiet and ordinary, the kind of day that gives you no warning. I was at my desk, coffee going cold, when my phone buzzed with a bank notification. I glanced at it expecting something routine, a bill payment confirmation, maybe a balance update. Instead, I saw a fraud alert. My credit card. A charge of $4,800. Pending. I sat up straight. I opened my banking app, and I started scrolling. The charges went back 11 days. Furniture stores, electronics, a car parts retailer, a cash advance from a bank branch 12 minutes from my parents' house. The amounts were spread out just enough to avoid triggering an automatic freeze, small enough to look like normal spending, large enough to add up fast. Someone who understood how fraud detection thresholds worked had done this, or someone who got lucky. $36,240. My hands were completely steady, which surprised me. I think I expected panic. Instead, there was just this cold, sharp clarity. The kind that comes when you've suspected something for a long time and the evidence finally shows up. I called the bank. I reported the charges as unauthorized. I asked for a hold on the account. The representative walked me through it calmly, gave me a case number, and told me to file a police report if I believed the fraud was committed by someone known to me. I drove to my parents' house. I remember the drive felt longer than usual, even though it wasn't. My chest was tight, but my jaw was set. I kept running the timeline through my head when the charges started, where they were made, who had ever had access to that card number. There was only one person I'd ever let hold that card. Once. About 3 years ago, for what was supposed to be a one-time family emergency. I pulled into the driveway. My dad was in the kitchen. My mom was setting plates for an early dinner. Caleb was on the couch, feet up, watching something on his phone. The whole scene looked so normal it made my skin crawl. "Hey," my mom said, smiling. "You're just in time." I put my phone on the kitchen counter, bank statement pulled up, and I said, "Does anyone want to explain this?" The room shifted. Caleb's eyes flicked to the screen for half a second, just half a second, and then he looked away. My dad walked over, glanced at the number, and sighed like I'd asked him something inconvenient. "What is this about, Cassidy?" "My card is maxed out. $36,000. The charges were made near this neighborhood." Caleb shrugged from the couch. "I had some emergencies. I was going to tell you." I turned to look at him. "You were going to tell me." "Don't make it a whole thing." He sat up, still casual, still unbothered. "It was an emergency. You always say if I need something." I never said take $36,000 without asking me. That's when my dad's demeanor changed. He straightened, crossed his arms, and said, "You shouldn't have left access available if you didn't want it used." I stared at him. "You're saying this is my fault." "I'm saying you weren't careful. You know how Caleb is. You should have been more careful." I looked around that kitchen. At my mom, who had gone very quiet and very focused on the plates she was arranging. At Caleb, who had leaned back again like the conversation was already over. At my dad, who was watching me with this expression I had seen my whole life, impatience dressed up as reason. I didn't raise my voice. I picked up my phone, saved the bank statement screenshot, and said, "I'm going to need all of it paid back." My dad actually laughed, not cruelly, just dismissively, like I'd said something naive. I left. But I want you to understand something. That first confrontation, that was just the surface. What came next went much deeper than one conversation in a kitchen. The days after that visit were some of the most disorienting of my life. Not because of the money, though $36,000 is not a small number, but because of what my family did next, which was nothing. They did absolutely nothing. No apology, no plan to repay, no acknowledgement that what had happened was wrong. My mom called me 2 days later to chat about a neighbor's new car. My dad texted me a meme. Caleb went completely silent, which was its own kind of answer. I started looking more carefully at my own financial history. That's the thing about being a financial analyst. Once you switch that part of your brain on, it doesn't turn off easily. I pulled up 3 years of records, bank statements, credit card histories, old receipts I'd kept in a folder on my laptop because I am the kind of person who keeps receipts. The patterns were right there. I had just never wanted to see them. Small amounts, over and over. My parents mentioning a bill and somehow me ending up paying it without ever explicitly agreeing to. A loan to Caleb 2 years ago for what he called rent that I had quietly written off in my head because asking for it back felt cruel. Transfers I had made during what I told myself were emergencies, now strung together in a sequence that told a much cleaner story than I was comfortable with. I had been a resource, a financial resource, and somewhere along the way, that had become so normal to them that Caleb apparently felt entitled to $36,000 of my money without a single conversation. I confronted my parents again, properly this time, sitting down, no phones, just the three of us. My dad said, "Family doesn't call the police on family." My mom said, "You're going to tear this whole family apart over money." And I sat there and I thought, I am not the one tearing anything apart. I am the one sitting here asking for accountability and being told that protecting myself is the real problem. I set a boundary that day. I told them clearly, I would not be covering any family expenses going forward. No bill, no emergency, nothing. I was done. The hostility that followed was immediate. My dad stopped calling. When he did reach out, it was clipped and cold. My mom started sending me messages about how I had changed, how I wasn't the Cassidy she raised, how I was being selfish and hard. Caleb, who had been silent, suddenly had a lot to say through my parents, never directly to me. I heard secondhand that he'd told them I was always like this, always holding things over people, always making everything about money. That almost broke me, almost. Because I had spent 32 years being the one who didn't make things about money. I was the one who quietly absorbed the cost of everything so no one else had to think about it. And now that I'd stopped, I was the selfish one. I went to work. I did my job. I came home at night and I sat with the anger and the grief, because it was grief, losing the version of your family you always wanted them to be, and I let myself feel it. And then I kept moving. Then I got a call from my bank. A new line of credit had been opened in my name. I had not opened it. The application had my social security number, my employer information, my address. It had been submitted online from an IP address I didn't recognize. The credit limit was $12,000. $8,000 had already been spent. I sat in my car in a parking garage, and I pressed my hand flat against the steering wheel, and I breathed. Caleb had done it again, this time using identity theft. I called my mentor that same evening. Her name is Patricia Holloway. She's a senior partner at a firm I'd worked with early in my career, one of the sharpest people I've ever known, the kind of woman who has seen every version of financial fraud and personal betrayal and doesn't flinch at any of it. I told her everything, from the first charges to the new credit line. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Cassidy, you already know what this is. Stop treating it like a family problem and start treating it like what it is." "A legal problem," I said. "A crime," she said. "Start documenting everything. Dates, amounts, every conversation, and don't tell them what you're doing." So I didn't. What they didn't know was that I had already started digging. Not just looking, digging. The kind of deep, methodical review I do professionally when a client suspects internal fraud. Transaction by transaction. Timestamp by timestamp. I pulled the original charges and cross-referenced the locations with Caleb's social media posts from those days. He had checked into a furniture store, posted a photo outside an electronics retailer. The dates matched the charges exactly. I had screenshots of all of it. The cash advance had been made in person, which meant the bank had security footage. I contacted the fraud department and formally requested that footage as part of my case. My case number was already on file from my first report. They confirmed they could preserve the footage pending a police report. The new line of credit application. I worked with my bank's fraud team to trace the IP address. It came back to a public Wi-Fi network at a coffee shop 4 blocks from my parents' house. The one Caleb went to every single morning. I had text messages from my mom mentioning it. "Your brother's at his coffee spot again." Patricia helped me organize everything into a clean, structured file. Transaction records, location data, social media cross-references, The IP trace. Screenshots of messages where my parents had acknowledged the original incident without ever denying Caleb's involvement. Every piece of it dated, labeled, sourced. Every accusation they threw at me, that I was forgetful, that I must have signed something without reading it, that I was exaggerating, every single one of those became fuel. Because every time they said something that wasn't true, I wrote it down. I noted the date and time. I kept the message. I wasn't angry anymore. I was precise. My family was planning a birthday dinner for me, my 32nd birthday. My mom had texted me about it like nothing was wrong, like the last several weeks hadn't happened, like we were just a normal family doing a normal birthday thing. She'd invited relatives. She'd mentioned a cake. I said I would come. Patricia asked me if I was sure. I'm sure, I said. I want them all in one room. The dinner was at my parents' house on a Saturday evening. The dining room smelled like the pot roast my mom made for every family occasion, the same recipe she'd used my entire life, rosemary and garlic, and something underneath that was just warmth, just home. It almost got to me. Almost. Relatives filled the chairs. Aunts and uncle, two cousins I hadn't seen in over a year. My dad was at the head of the table, relaxed, telling a story. Caleb was beside him, laughing on cue. My mom kept touching my arm, refilling my water glass, being so normal it felt like a performance. I sat and I watched and I waited. About 40 minutes in, after the food had been served and the table had settled into that comfortable post-meal looseness, my dad looked at me and said, "So, are we past all this?" The table went a little quiet. "All what?" I asked. "The drama, the accusations." He gestured vaguely. "Caleb made a mistake, we've all moved on." "A mistake," I said. "Cassidy," my mom's voice had a warning in it. $36,000, and a fraudulent line of credit is a mistake. My dad's jaw tightened. "Lower your voice." "I'm not raising it." I reached into the bag beside my chair and placed a folder on the table. Clean, labeled, 3 inches thick. I have documentation of every charge, timestamps, location data that matches Caleb's own social media posts from those days, security footage request confirmation from the bank, the IP trace on the credit application, which leads back to the coffee shop Caleb uses every morning. I opened the folder to the first page and turned it so my dad could see it. "This is not a mistake. This is a pattern." The table was completely silent now. Caleb said, "That's not, you can't just." "I already reported the fraud," I said. "Both incidents, the case is open." My dad stood up. "You called the police on your own brother." "I reported identity theft and credit card fraud," I said. "Yes. After everything this family has done for you." "Dad," my voice was calm, flat, the voice I use when I'm presenting findings to a boardroom. "I have 3 years of records showing what this family has taken from me. That's in the folder too." My phone was on the table. I tapped it once. Patricia's voice came through the speaker, clear and professional. She introduced herself, her credentials, her firm. She explained, briefly and without any emotion whatsoever, the legal exposure Caleb was facing: wire fraud, identity theft, unauthorized use of a financial instrument. She explained that cooperation with the investigation would be considered in how the case proceeded. She thanked everyone and went quiet. My uncle cleared his throat. My dad sat back down. Caleb was staring at the table. His face had gone a color I had never seen on him before. Not anger, not defiance, something smaller than that. My mom had her hand over her mouth. I closed the folder. I picked up my phone. I stood up and I said, "Happy birthday to me." And I walked out. The drive home was quiet. No music, just the sound of the road and the particular stillness that comes after something is finally over. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I felt something I didn't have a word for at first, and then I recognized it. It was relief. The specific relief of a person who has been carrying something heavy for a very long time and has finally set it down in the right place. The legal process moved forward without me having to push it. The case was being handled. Patricia stayed involved in an advisory capacity. Caleb, I was told by my uncle, the one who'd been at the table, the one who'd gone very quiet when Patricia spoke. Caleb had gotten a lawyer. My parents were not speaking to me. I was told through the same uncle that my dad was angry and my mom was devastated and that everyone felt I had gone too far. I read that message and I set my phone face down on my desk and I went back to work. I spent the next several weeks focused on two things: repairing my credit and rebuilding my boundaries. The credit repair was the easier of the two, honestly. It was paperwork, dispute filings, documentation, all things I knew how to do. The fraudulent line of credit was removed. The original charges were being reviewed. My score would recover. That was just math. The boundaries were harder, because setting a boundary with people who have never respected one isn't a single moment. It's a daily decision. It's every unanswered call that makes your stomach clench. It's every family event you're not at anymore. It's choosing your own stability over their comfort, over and over, even when it doesn't feel clean or triumphant, even when it just feels like loss. But I kept choosing it. I started seeing a therapist. I started running in the mornings, something I hadn't done since college. I started working on the business plan for the consulting firm I'd been putting off for 2 years. I started making decisions purely based on what I actually wanted rather than what would cause the least disruption to everyone else. For the first time in my life, I was the one I was taking care of. And one evening I was sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop open and the city quiet outside my window, and I thought about something Patricia had said to me early on, when I was still in the middle of all of it, still second-guessing myself. She had said, "The people who benefit most from your silence are always going to tell you that speaking up is the real problem." I had written that down. I still have it. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant to be strong, not in the way I had always performed strength, absorbing everything, never breaking, never asking for anything. Real strength, the kind that says, I see what is happening, I will not pretend otherwise, and I choose myself. It didn't mean staying. It meant walking away. If you've ever been betrayed financially by someone you trusted, you know how layered that pain really is. It's not just about the money, and I say that as a financial analyst who knows exactly what $36,000 means. It goes deeper than numbers. It's about what that money represented: the hours of work, the years of trust, the version of your family you kept believing in despite the evidence. It's about respect. It's about being seen accurately by people who should know you best. Share your story in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between protecting yourself and keeping the peace? Have you ever been the responsible one who finally stopped being responsible for everyone else? I want to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And if this story reached something inside you, something you've been sitting with for a long time, click hype. Help it find the people who need it. Your story matters more than you think. The hardest battles are almost never with strangers. They're with the people whose approval you grew up needing. The ones whose voices are already inside your head before they even open their mouths. But choosing yourself, after all of it, after the guilt and the grief and the years of making yourself smaller, choosing yourself is not selfish. It's the only thing that was ever really yours to do. If this story gave you something today, pass it on. Someone out there is sitting in the middle of exactly this, still telling themselves they're overreacting. Tell them they're not. Stay clear, stay steady. You deserve better than what they gave you, and now you know it.